On Canal Walk, down behind Kilkenny Castle, a German gold and silversmith lives and works. In the early days of the Kilkenny Design Centre, Rudolf Heltzel from Berlin was invited to come and work there. Now, 7 years later, he has his own studio. Working with him are Martin Mahony, who learned his trade with Heltzel, and Michael Fitzpatrick, who trained in the design workshops.
The fourth thing one has to remember is when you want to do anything, any piece of jewellery, you first have to know what you want to do. In this case now I decided I wanted to make a pendant just made out of solid silver, no stones, nothing else. So you turn around this idea in your head and you form an opinion of what you eventually might do. Then you try to put down this on paper, and after some 3, 4, 5 attempts, sometimes it comes immediately, sometimes it takes weeks before an idea matures. You put it down on paper, and that's the rough, basic idea. From there you start. You take your raw material, your silver in this case, take it from the stage it is supplied in, normally in bar form or in sheet form. You roll it down to the right dimensions. And when it's rolled down and when it has the dimensions that you require, you start working at it. In this case, it meant you first cut off the individual pieces. After they're cut off, you have to bend them into the proper shapes. When they bend into the proper shapes, you have to assemble them so that they form this pendant. Normally, you will have, of course, to clean up the surfaces before you assemble the things so that it looks very fine and finished, a very good surface finish in the end. The next stage is soldering, which means putting all the pieces together by silver again, which has just a lower melting point than the surrounding material. And you heat up the whole thing until this silver, the silver solder, flows into the joints and amalgamates into the surrounding material. And you get a bond which is very, very, very strong indeed and just can't be broken at any stage. It's just silver all through. Then it has to be filed, cut to shape, emery papered, just be prepared so that it almost looks right. Then eventually in the end I have to go and I polish it. Previously this polishing was done by hand as well, but this is the only sphere where the machine really gets into the handmade work. The last thing then to do is I put in my own name stamps, my both initials RH, and these are in a way my own guarantee that the piece is up to the standards I want the piece to have.
Much of the silver and gold made in Rudolf Heltzel's workshop is sold abroad. He sells some of it in Kilkenny itself, in the craft centre which is run by his wife, Eva. It's in Roth House, a 16th century merchant's dwelling, which was renovated by the Board of Works in Kilkenny and now houses an archaeological museum, a butcher's shop and, of course, the craft shop. Rudolf, do you work more in gold or in silver?
When I started, of course, I worked much more in silver because it's just a cheaper material and gold is more expensive.
I notice you've got mostly rings and jewellery here. Do you make anything else, or why do you concentrate on this?
It's simply, again, for financial reasons that there's much greater chance to sell jewelry than there is to sell hollowware. And therefore, when you start, you just have to do the things where you have a fair chance of survival. And then later on, of course, you can branch out, and I have done more hollowware and I have done more gold jewelry recently.
How long does it take to train to become a silversmith or a goldsmith?
Now, if you look at it in principle, you never stop your training. I mean, you can go on and go on and go on, and therefore it's a trade which I therefore like so much because you always can become better. But as an apprenticeship, I said to those boys I took in, it's 4 years. And that's the rule in most continental countries. It's 4 years apprenticeship.
Well, are there a lot of young people trying to do it who can't be taken because of that?
And now here in Kilkenny, I mean, I myself and the Kilkenny Design workshops, we find that we get an awful lot of applications of people wanting to do things, but very often the people applying, they're not really looking for a job as a silversmith or goldsmith. They're really basically looking for a job. And of course, it would be much better if people were looking, if they had this type of vocation and if they would start this work just because they want to do this and nothing else.
I know. Your prices are high by Irish standards. I know they're not by international standards, but how do you convince people that they ought to spend money on things like that?
You can't convince. You see, ultimately, to find out whether a thing is expensive or not expensive, you only can find out yourself, and you only can find out by comparison. So unless there's a lot or much more modern and quality and good jewelry and silverware produced, people never really can make up their mind whether it's expensive or cheap. But I myself, I export a lot to other countries, and everywhere there it's reckoned to be very cheap indeed.
It's been said, in fact it's almost become a cliche, that we as a race are visually illiterate. Do you think that's true?
I don't think it's true. I don't really think it's true. But you see, of course, there are many handicaps. Young people in school, they don't get an awful lot of visual training. Then if you go into the homes of young people, mostly the parents couldn't bother less about the visual aspects of life, whether it's in furniture or whether it's in anything connected with the visual arts. So therefore you can't really expect anybody to have high visual standards, and it's up to education. And with education I don't only mean in the schools. In the schools it is important, but visual education is even a building that's restored in a proper way, like this building we're in at the moment. Or it's a shop display or anything connected with it.
Why is it that people have this attitude to things around them? Is it because we were an oppressed nation?
No, it's part of the truth. Of course, you see, Ireland, first of all, is an isolated country. Whenever you're isolated, it's very hard to take up all the trends and to form your own opinion and to develop. For example, you could compare, or I often do, you could compare Ireland with Poland. Poland, a relatively small nation, always repressed either by the Russians or by the Austrians or by the Germans, and still having developed visual arts, and they're quite good at decorating their farmhouses, and wherever there's any free space, they put on their murals and their paintings, and they're really a visual people.
Well, do you think, now you've been here 7 years, do you think we've improved in the time you've been here? Have attitudes changed much?
There certainly is a big improvement, and you see, improvement comes about once people start to earn money in any way. If you have money, you can spend money. First of all, you buy all the cheap things because you want to have things. It doesn't matter what you get, you just want them. But later on, you become more discriminating, and you will, by comparison, find out which is a better thing, which thing is worthwhile to have, and which thing isn't worthwhile to have. And it's a very long, it's an evolutionary process. It can't come overnight.
Is there enough concentration on, or is there too much concentration on old crafts in Ireland?
I think there probably is. A lot of people have this obsession with Celtic art or Celtic craft or whatever. But you see, we're living now in 1973, and in my opinion, it's no good at all to go back to the year 600 and take a tradition which was broken at any point in history and start there again, for everything else has developed and evolved. For if you go into the National Museum, you see these beautiful pieces of old gold and silver. They were made for a certain purpose, and the purpose doesn't exist today. So therefore you have to do a different thing for today. And if you only imitate them, you're not really sincere.
And do you think that's kind of stopping development of a modern craft?
Yeah, if you spend too much time thinking of everything you have done in the past, and if you don't put your energy into developing something new, you won't make progress.